Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm grateful to the Minister for outlining the order for IFAD, the International Fund for Agricultural Development. I welcome the support that this replenishment indicates for tackling poverty, food insecurity and climate change and promoting agricultural development in the world's poorest countries. IFAD's 45 years experience supporting rural communities in developing countries equips it well to meet the current global crisis. IFAD was created to fund agricultural development projects, especially for food production, and strengthen the systems to deliver food and economic security to millions of smallholders. Since it was founded in 1977, global extreme poverty has dropped from around 40% of the global population to 10%. It is international development, driven often by concerted multilateral efforts, that have helped drive progress forward. And in 2023, the final frontier in the fight against extreme poverty depends on us reaching the most remote rural communities. An estimated 3 billion people live in rural areas in poor countries, most of whom depend on agriculture for their food and income. They are also among the world's poorest and most vulnerable people, with 80% of women, children and men in extreme poverty living in rural areas. Where we have made so much progress in recent decades, reaching people over those last 10 miles will be integral to ending extreme poverty by 2030. This is exactly what IFAD specialises in and what it was set up to do. Madam Chair, we face a global food security crisis. 800 million women, children and men are too hungry to live normal and productive lives. The people who grow our food do not have enough to feed themselves. The ripple effects of Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine have shaken global food systems and supply chains. Food prices reached an all-time high last year. High fuel and fertiliser costs hampered food production, and price hikes forced many small-scale farmers to choose between spending their limited financial resources on purchasing food or planting crops. Small-scale food producers in poor countries have been among the hardest hit by the food crisis, which has been compounded by the lingering effects of the pandemic, global inflation, accelerating climate change and conflict. Our continued commitment to IFAD is therefore completely necessary if we are to achieve SDG 2 by 2030, and I'm happy to confirm that we will not seek to divide the committee on this issue today. We know the consequences when extreme poverty is allowed to fester, conflict as in the Sahel, irregular migration and displacement, and the deep moral injury of lost lives, lost opportunities and lost human potential. It is firmly in the UK's interest to continue to invest in IFAD's work for this reason. For every billion of investment, it has increased the incomes of 8.6 million beneficiaries by 20%. Its work is at the front line of some of the great challenges facing the world, creating enough sustainable jobs and food to meet the challenges of population growth, adapting and building resilience to climate change, and addressing a global hunger crisis that is at this moment killing someone in East Africa every 32 seconds. I therefore welcome that at least half of IFAD's funding in this replenishment will go toward rural development projects in sub-Saharan Africa, a continent of 1.4 billion people just miles from Europe. Africa's strategic importance to the UK shouldn't be understated. Briefly, I would also like to put on record my support for the news this week that IFAD has welcomed Ukraine as its 178th member. The war has had far-reaching consequences for food security worldwide. Given Ukraine's role as a leading global exporter of cereals, but less often talked about, is food insecurity and poverty in the country itself. According to a recent report, many rural populations in Ukraine are on the brink of poverty, with 44% living on incomes below the subsistence minimum and 7% experiencing malnutrition. So in this week of all weeks, as we mark a year since Russia's barbaric invasion, it is important that the UK contributes so that Ukraine will benefit from IFAD's work in the years to come. Madam Chair, it is at this point I must remark on the fact that our contribution to IFAD has been depleted to this replenishment. Where other countries are stepping up and have supported IFAD with record contributions, the UK has dropped from its top donor and influencer to 11th. I would like to ask the Minister why this is. After the raft of reforms this government said it had succeeded in securing in the previous replenishment, why has the UK suddenly stepped back from the role it once played in the middle of a global food security crisis? IFAD is clearly a strong investment. In the government's own multilateral development review in 2016, it was found to have good impact and value for money and aligned strongly with the United Kingdom's priorities. In the Centre for Global Development's 2021 report on quality odour, comparing UN agencies and governments across the world for the quality of their development work, IFAD came top out of all 49 countries and agencies assessed. It rated among the top agency in all metrics for its prioritisation of long-term challenges over short-term results, for its collaboration and capacity building in partner countries, and for transparency, accountability and improvement. The UK, by comparison, dropped to 16. Madam Chair, I would also like to express my concern about how long it has taken to bring this SI forward. The 12th replenishment of the International Fund for Agriculture Development was agreed in February 2021. It has been 2 years since then. It took until June last year for us to announce any commitment. It took a further 7 months to bring this SI forward. Our last payment to IFAD was June 2021. Our next payment at the earliest is coming 14 months into the 36-month funding cycle. Where on earth has the UK been? If every donor had taken the same course of action as us, the 20 million people IFAD helps would go hungry. Can I ask the Minister why the government has taken so long bringing this forward? What assessments they've made of the impact of IFAD's ability to plan and deliver projects, not to mention the UK's own influence on its board? As they say, trust takes years to build, seconds to break, and forever to repair. Does the Minister accept that the FCDO's chaotic management of the ODA budget has done serious harm to the UK's hard-won reputation as a trusted partner on the world stage? And finally, on reform, what monitoring of progress against reform secured in the last replenishment has actually taken place? What reassurance can the Minister provide that money spent through the International Fund for Agriculture Development will remain focused on local producers and domestic markets that support food security and local economies around the world, and that is not undermined by steering small-scale farmers towards disproportionately focusing on links to international commodity markets where they face immense power imbalances? And what efforts have been made to steer IFAD to do more work, not just through governments, but also other partners and agencies, to ensure its work is reaching smallholders in fragile and conflict-affected states in an effective and cost-effective way? And finally, can I ask once again if the Minister will publish the Global Food Security Action Plan so that this House can actually scrutinise how our investment in IFAD and other initiative and partners joins up with the rest of the UK's work in this very important area? Madam Chair, the next Labour government's approach to international development would underline the importance of tackling global poverty, reclaiming the UK's past leadership in international development and within the multilateral system, and bringing Britain back to the world stage as a trusted partner. It is both the right thing to do and in Britain's interest to invest in climate action, eradicate poverty and improve global food security for the century to come. The International Fund for Agriculture Development has played a big part in helping us achieve that over many years and has been a very effective vehicle for doing so. We do not oppose these orders today, but I reiterate my regret at this government's retreat from the multilateral system and the damage done to Britain's reputation and influence on the world stage. Thank you.